wasn't here, so Tommy's not liable.
All right, we got 4:30. Call the meeting to order. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. Start off with citizen concerns. Anything to be said that is not already on the agenda?
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street, Mobile. I talked a little bit last week, asked some questions of Pat Gill about elections during 2020. And I referenced an article that I couldn't find, and I have since found it. And I would like to have it entered into the record. I have enough copies for, it's from the Iowa Standard.
Okay. You want that?
Move to receive.
Second. Motion by DeWitt, second by Radding.
I firmly believe that our elections...
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0. Go ahead.
I believe that our elections are probably going to be more contentious rather than less in the future. And I think it's irregularities like this that can cause a big problem if we have like close elections and we've had people claiming that elections were stolen. So what I would like to do, I think it was important to put this on the record, but I also think it's important for Mr. Gill to have his side. I would like to know, this article, if we assume it to be accurate, first off, is it accurate? And then the next thing is, this tells us what happened, but I think it would be important for Mr. Gill to tell the public his thought process, what other properties he looked at, and how he came up with the decision to do what he did. Are you willing to do that for me?
Certainly. And what do you mean by irregularity?
Well, I think the irregularity in this case is the fact that the ballots, the absentee ballots were kept at the Sioux City Museum where the director was a candidate on that ballot.
Correct. That's all accurate. And what you asked me last night is where the ballots were stored, are being stored. That's what you asked me.
Yes.
That's what I told you. That's what I answered. During the 2020 election, it was right in the middle of the pandemic. If you want to visit that room back there, it's a very small room. And we couldn't get people to work in that area. And so we went to the museum because I was familiar with that space, and it gave us enough room to spread out, plus a secure room. Video surveillance 24 hours a day, and we also had off-duty deputy sheriffs who accompanied those as soon as they left this room here, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They were there for 2 days. And they were there with those ballots. They sat there overnight, and it said that Chad Sheehan didn't verify that, but you can be rest assured. You can ask. He wasn't the sheriff at the time, but we used the off-duty police officers and deputy sheriffs during that election because of security issues. But that's, they were babysat. It was transparent. I called the Journal. And in fact, I think the Journal might even had a picture in the paper of the ballots being transferred with the deputy there. So that's what it was. And both parties were there, and they observed that process. And you can ask Susan Stewart, who was the chairperson at the time.
Did you look at any other properties?
I contacted the city and talked to them about spaces that were available.
Did they have any suggestions?
No, they did not.
So that was really how'd you come up to decide on the city?
Because it was a space that, as I said before,
That you
it
were
was a
familiar
space that I was familiar with. I knew that it was secure and that it had 24 hours surveillance with the cameras, security cameras.
Did you clear this to go to anybody else for other
I
ideas?
don't have to.
No, I know you don't.
Right. Who would I clear it with?
Well, I think you have capable people with ideas right next to you. Not that you have to have their
Right.
permission.
I don't. And that's what I had to do, was during a pandemic, trying to get people to work and spread out. And honestly, I didn't have any concerns with it because anybody it was transparent, it was made public, and anybody that had any concerns could come to the museum and they could have witnessed it themselves, which party observers did. The Republicans had party observers there because you're concerned about a Democrat being on that ballot. He had absolutely no access to the ballots during that period of time.
And I'm not accusing you of anything.
Sure, and I understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, I just think that we've got an election coming up that very well could be as bad or worse than the last one.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
And I just think that if we put this on the record and we have what you're saying on the record, it may help with the next election.
And I hope so too.
We want no surprises.
There was no surprise.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, and I'm not
This was
accusing you of that.
transparent, this was public. You can enter on the record, but it was already publicly stated that everybody knew exactly what occurred during that election in 2020.
Well, I would just make a suggestion. There are other museums that have every bit as good a security in the city.
What museum was that?
The Mid-American Transportation Museum.
Those are not public entities. I have to
Yes, it
use
is.
public facilities first.
It's on city property.
It's not run by the city.
Okay. Yeah, that is true.
Right.
It has a board of directors that's separate from
That's correct.
from the city.
Right.
All right. I thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Appreciate
Good
it.
luck on the next election.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Anything that's not on the agenda? All right, moving on to approval of the agenda. I'll move that.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0. Moving on to the consent agenda. Items 3 through 7 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the October 4th, 2022 meeting. Item 4, approval of claims. Item 5 from Human Resources, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. Item 6A from the auditor, receive county auditor's quarterly report. And 6B, receive county recorder's report of fees collected. Item 7 from county treasurer, approve property tax refund request for parcel 8847062065020 in the amount of $1,419. That ends the consent agenda, and anybody to,
I'd move it.
all right.
Second.
Motion by Taylor, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0. Item 8 from juvenile detention, approval to increase daily rate for Omaha Nation youth.
Ryan Weber, juvenile detention. As we know, there's been a lot of requests for more money coming from the county. Going back through some of the old contracts for the services we provide, I've noticed a chance to recoup some more money. You know, the budget's been the same for a while, but it's not going to be that way if we don't start bringing in more money. And all our clients has been really good, business has been really good. A lot of our agencies are still paying rates from 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So taking a look at our lowest rate contract, which would be Omaha Nation, they're paying a rate from probably 15 years ago, if you guys remember when we came upon that rate. Everybody else has raised theirs almost on their own end willingly with us even asking them. I've got an informal agreement with them that going to $50 more a day would be no issue for them. We're still the cheapest around, the closest, and we do the best service. So I'm just requesting permission to raise the daily rate for these guys, $50. And then we'll come up with an amendment on the contract. Contracts can be terminated anytime, 30-day notice. It was never a set date contract, so that's not an issue there. Just doing simple numbers, just $50 alone then would have been 11,000 more last year. And as we look at some of these other contracts, in the next few years, I think somewhere around 30,000, I could bring in additional just by getting them up to date.
They got 7 years of inflation on there too.
Well, I mean, you saw that my daily meals went from $7 to $9 per meal, 3 meals a day. Spending $30 just to feed each kid, so $100 doesn't go far when you've got, you know, paying employees decent wage and keeping the lights on, fixing everything. So we can't lose money to keep them.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? 4-0. Thank you. Item 9, Summit Carbon Solutions, Kaylee and Riley's project update.
Hi, good afternoon. Do you guys mind if I pass these out?
Go ahead.
Just some information. You guys are so far away. And in here, I just have a county map that looks like you already have it out. And then,
I'll move to receive it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0. Go ahead.
so there's a county map, there is a frequently asked question page, and then an Iowa state page with just some more information and then specific information about Iowa. So I just want to kind of start off by reintroducing myself, because last time I was here, it was the end of May, I believe. So my name is Kaylee Langrell. I work for Turnkey Logistics. We represent Summit Carbon Solutions doing primarily the non-environmental permitting. Riley is here with me. He is the contact for non-environmental permitting in Woodbury County. So he's working with Dave and Mark. So just moving on from that, my primary job is going around to county board meetings, giving informational presentations, answering questions. So today, I'll kind of give you guys a brief project update, go over a little bit of that fact page, and then we can answer any questions you guys may have. So as far as the update, we do expect construction to start in late summer of 2023, so nothing has changed with that since the last time we were here. As far as land acquisition in this county, we are at 57% of easement miles acquired as of October 5th. Permitting, we have not submitted any permits in this county yet. We are working on submitting permits. We have submitted some in Iowa, but not in Woodbury County yet. And then as far as partnerships, investors, kind of went over that last time, but I'll just point out they are on this Iowa state page, some of our larger investors, and then our partnerships, and then it also goes over the 5 states that Summit Carbon Solutions is proposing a project in. And then lastly, just talk a little bit about community investment. I think we talked about this last time too, but just to go over it again, you know, Summit Carbon Solutions, we do consider ourselves a part of the community. We're an Iowa-based company. We will have people working and living locally to maintain the line. So we are looking for ways to plug into communities, whether that be through volunteering time or donations. So I do have my contact information at the bottom of this page. So you guys can reach out to me if you think of anything, and you know, also if you have any questions after this meeting. Just moving on to the frequently asked questions page. This we kind of put together after our first round of presentations. So we've done presentations in almost all of the project counties, and just kind of compiled a list of questions that were frequently asked. And most commonly, I think safety was a big concern, rightly so. Everybody should be concerned about safety. So I just want to focus on that and go over some of the things that Summit Carbon Solutions is doing to ensure safety. So first of all, 100% of the pipeline welds will be X-rayed. Second, the pipeline will be hydrostatically tested, so it will be filled up with water up to 120 25% of its max operating pressure. And then we also have block valves. So you can kind of see on your county map the block valves on here. It's the little red ribbons that you see on your map. So these are at a maximum 20 miles apart. So they're no more than 20 miles apart. Most places on the project line, you won't even find them 20 miles apart. They're closer together. And then, so the pipeline will be monitored 24/7 by our staff in Ames, but like I said earlier, we will also have we will hire a staff to live and work locally throughout the project line to maintain it and respond to any kind of issue. And then lastly, we do have staff dedicated to working with emergency response. So Rod Dillon, we've also added his contact information on the bottom of this Iowa State handout. He is our Director of Regulatory Compliance, which basically just means he's the safety guy. So he's contacting all of the emergency managers for all of our counties, talking with them about what they may need, getting them ready for trainings. And then with my conversations with him, what I do know is that there will be multiple trainings. So first trainings just with the emergency response in the counties, and then once our staff is hired, our full-time staff is hired, they will do trainings with the county together. So they will know each other and, work with each other in that way. I think that's all I have to go over. Just really wanted to make sure I touched on the safety part. If you guys have any questions, we can do our best to answer them.
Thank you very much for being here. So a couple of questions.
Yeah.
When did you start approaching landowners as far as getting voluntary easements, approximately?
I believe it was last year. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, so maybe a year
Yeah. Well,
ago?
has it been a full year? I need to double check that.
I'm writing it down. Yeah, it's been a while that we've been working plans on
A
it.
year would be fair?
Yeah.
10 months, 12 months, something along those
Close.
lines?
Oh, along those lines, yeah.
So just based on your statement that you plan to break ground, so to speak, in late summer of 2023, if at this point you're at 57%, do you feel like you will have the same rate of success in a year versus if you're only that far, and it's been a year right now, and you're going to break ground in less than a year? Do you have any projections of how many easements you'll get, and at what point the IUB may weigh in on eminent domains usage in order to be able to secure the rest of the 43% or whatever that remaining number is?
So to answer that question, I feel there's really no way for me to guess what our acquisition would be. But what I can tell you is that things have picked up, and I would say that they will probably continue to pick up. I think we're doing a lot better than we were back in May when I was here the first time as far as land acquisition. So I have a positive outlook on that. I do think that 100% voluntary acquisition is possible, especially in Woodbury County. And I can tell you that with confidence. As far as the IUB, we're hoping for that decision to be made in June of 2023.
As far as the usage of eminent domain for those that can't be
for the
voluntary?
state permit. I think it is very confusing. So my understanding before was that the IUB and eminent domain, the permit was all together, but I believe the eminent domain is a separate issue. So we would get the permit from the IUB, and then we would pursue the eminent domain. If that would be the process. Is that definitely what is going to happen? No, I can't say that that's definitely what's going to happen because we don't have our permit yet.
Okay. And then my other follow-on question is, has Summit Carbon Solutions been sued in the same way that Woodbury County landowners have sued Navigator successfully with the injunction that Judge Roger Saylor granted recently, denying access to properties for the purpose of surveillance? I
know there are a lot of survey issues going on right now. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not really equipped to speak on that. I do know that Summit Carbon Solutions has sent out notices via mail, as the law requires, to landowners for survey permission.
But you haven't been denied in the same way, and there hasn't been some sort of court action akin to what's happened with Navigator?
In Woodbury County, I'm not sure if there have been counties or what counties at this time. I can figure out.
Okay.
But
Yeah, if you don't mind following up, because that's, you know, the recent ruling within the last 72 hours that
Yeah.
denied them. So I'm just curious if something like that is happening here.
yeah, I don't think there has been that kind of case yet with Summit Carbon Solutions. Will it happen? Possibly. But
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Thank you very much.
May I?
Go ahead.
On PHMSA 195.210 pipeline location, is that code or is that just a
So
sort
this,
of an industry? And I have a follow-up question, but is that some sort of code or what is that?
so that is the regulations put forth by the federal government, PHMSA.
Okay,
So that's what we are required. We are required to be 3 feet below the ground level. We are going for a 4-foot minimum. So that's just what's laid out right here on this part of your sheet are the PHMSA requirements, and then how Summit Carbon Solutions is going above and beyond those requirements.
okay, and it says that 50-foot, requires a 50-foot setback from all dwellings. Summit Carbon Solutions is designing the pipeline that far exceeds the minimum setback. Can you be more specific on what Summit's
I can't give
number
you,
is? Is it consistent across the board, or is it
it varies. It varies based
So,
on,
up to as little as?
I wouldn't feel comfortable giving you that number until I actually had it. I can figure out what the setbacks we have in place in Woodbury County are, and I can let you know what the minimum and maximum are.
Okay, maybe another way to ask this is if you had rural property, would you be comfortable with a pipeline 50 feet from your dwelling?
A CO2 pipeline?
Yeah.
Probably so. Yes, I would. And I know a lot of people think that that's a crazy answer, but it is CO2. It's in the air right now. Pipeline is the safest mode of transportation. I believe in the people that we have hired experts. I know a lot of people say this is Summit Carbon Solutions' first pipeline. Well, the people that have been hired to put this pipeline in have years and years of experience. So I'm not worried about it personally, but I know that a lot of people are. So that's why I come to these meetings and I try to give you guys all the information I have on safety and the regulations that we're required to follow.
Per Mr. Taylor, if you're going to get back to us on anything, could you get back to us on what your Summit's setbacks are?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
All right, I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Item 10, Building Services, approval of Sioux City Engineering Company, change order number 4 for the 28th Street project.
Kenny Schmidt's Building Services. This change order number 4 for Sioux City Engineering Company is basically driven out of the inability to close access to the LEC site to finish the 28th Street project. Early on, 28th Street was paved on both sides of the entrance, up to both sides of the entrance of the LEC, and rock was placed in that entrance area so that we could continue the construction process at the LEC. That still goes on. The main driving force there is we're receiving semi-loads of precast concrete for the walls for the LEC. We can't close that entrance and disrupt that process without incurring further costs from Hausman Construction on delays. Everyone would like 28th Street to be reopened. Currently, that is the only thing stopping us. The city has requested that the county provide a cap over an asphalt cap over the current subbase and rock that's already there to protect that subbase over the winter months. And also this includes a curb That would prevent some washout. We did incur some washout in that area. Here about 6 weeks ago, that was repaired, and everyone just wants to make sure that that doesn't reoccur, and that's what that curb would do. This would also get the street opened up, and at that point, it would aid the city in snow removal through the winter months.
That makes sense.
I'll move it.
Second. Motion by Taylor, second by Raddick. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, secondary roads, item 11, consider approval of resolution to set load limits on county bridges. Any surprises here, Mark? Are they all?
It didn't surprise me, but it might surprise the board. Last week, I closed County Bridge E66, which is on 120th Street between Dallas and Delaware Avenue at the recommendation of our bridge inspector. It has some broken adjacent timber stringers. Those are the members that span from abutment to pier and pier to pier on the bridge. It was posted 3 tons with those broken stringers. Probably saw an overload, and it just can't safely carry traffic anymore. The good news is that bridge is our next bridge headed out for letting. We have our Corps of Engineers permit on it, and we're in the middle of final plan preparation. We're expecting letting on it in January at this point in time is what we're trying to get it finished up for. That would make it available for construction in 2023. So at least the period in which it'll be closed is short. But I recommend approval of the agenda, or of the agenda item to approve 8 county bridge postings, including the one closure.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0.
I guess the sign of process, or progress is there's only 8 bridges this year. This used to be as much as 20 or 30 of them in every inspection cycle, so. Just like we've trimmed the number of deficient bridges in half over the last 16, 17 years, we're seeing fewer and fewer of them getting into that condition where we have to close or continue to reduce postings. Pat needs to sign this too. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 12, Community and Economic Development Zoning Coordinator Daniel Priestley. Approved motion to direct Woodbury County Zoning Commission to initiate a review process and provide recommendation of a zoning ordinance text amendment for the Woodbury County zoning ordinance to address the temporary sales of food, beverages, and services during future RAGBRAI events along the RAGBRAI route in unincorporated Woodbury County.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Dan Priestley. This is a follow-up from a couple weeks ago when we had it as a discussion item. This is the proposal to fix the RAGBRAI issue. I'm just simply asking for direction, bring this to the Zoning Commission for public hearing.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then for item 13, you might want to stay up there, I don't know. Board of Supervisors, approve motion to direct staff at the Woodbury County Zoning Commission to initiate a review process and provide recommendation of a zoning ordinance text amendment to the Woodbury County zoning ordinance to address the permitting of hazardous liquid pipelines. And on this, I know that, from what I read, a lot of things are regulated by PIMSA and other things. I kind of feel like that, we put setbacks out there for windmills, out of the idea that you're protecting the landowner nearby. And, from pipeline accidents that I've read about, most of them have a cloud somewhere around more like 500 foot as far as an area. So personally, I'd like to see us have our own setback of 500 foot and language that says if it's superseded by some kind of federal law, or then it's superseded. But at least we have that out there as a liability thing to protect the county in the permitting process. I don't want there to be an accident that something happens and then the county gets sued because we failed to have any kind of setbacks on it. And whether or not the federal government's going to have it out there and somebody else is liable at the same time, but I don't want the county involved in it. If that makes sense. And I don't know if there's a way to draft that language if the zoning commission's able to or not, but
Where did you come up with 500 feet? I mean,
just from reading.
Just what?
From reading about pipeline incidents.
Is there any ordinances elsewhere in the state?
Not that I know of. Maybe Shelby?
Yep, and what are the setbacks there?
And I'm just thinking out loud here, but I'm assuming that Shelby County did some sort of legal review. Is there something that we could anticipate Joshua working with planning and zoning? And I don't know how all the rules and regulations work and dovetail together, supersede, I think was your word. You know, does a county have unlimited authority to say 2,500 feet or 5,000? I'm not suggesting that, so don't have a heart attack out there, but just, is there any left or right lane guidance that planning and zoning and the Board of Adjustment could receive as they work through the process as far as your recommendation?
Well, the precise issue hasn't been litigated as far as whether counties can have their own setbacks for pipelines. I think the general view is that it's regulated at the state level through the Iowa Utilities Board. Did Shelby County actually pass their proposed ordinance?
I think it's still going through
You want to say it
Meaning
up
it
at the
hasn't-
microphone?
the process. I think they've got it at zoning commission level.
Daniel, can you go up to the microphone just so that...
My understanding is they're still kind of going through the process. I'm not sure if they've had final approval, but I believe it's went through some, or at least anticipating some public hearings.
So, yeah, my understanding, and I haven't talked with anyone specifically in Shelby County, but their process, they're working with an outside law firm, and they're anticipating that it would be litigated. So if Woodbury County were to put one, I think that there are arguments to be made on both sides, but I think that it's likely that it would be litigated.
Well, I'd kind of like to think that if Shelby County's going for 1,000 for some sort of sake of consistency, I mean, they'd be a little bit more united to be at least on the same setbacks.
I think
I mean, that's something they could discuss too in the zoning side is, you know, I'm just trying to give the direction to have them visit that as far as the number.
I have less issue personally with the safety issue than I do the landowner's rights. But that's just me.
And I think kind of what Chairman Raddick you're kind of referencing, inserting a setback into the ordinance where it would pull together with the conditional use process, basically. So Zoning Commission Board of Adjustment would have to consider, here's a set criteria in addition, basically putting setback language in like you referenced. Is that kind of the direction you're looking at?
Well, that's,
Versus-
yeah, what I'd like to see. As far as whether or not our county has teeth to enforce that, I don't know. And I guess, I don't know how you put that language in there that says, Woodbury County requests us X amount, 500 or 1,000 foot setback, if not superseded by state or federal authority.
And Shelby County, I believe they define what occupied structure is, a structure that's in use for about 12 months period or longer as a whole. So there's different styles of setbacks. I think they even reference a certain distance even away from incorporated areas as well. So there's a series of setbacks that are actually there. So it just depends on if you're targeting single-family dwellings or other areas as well, community organizations, et cetera.
Do we think the law firm may be open to receiving our questions? Maybe, Joshua, would you be willing to just ask if there's anything they can tell us about the rationale and if it makes sense to try and dovetail with them or not? Because it would seem fruitless to have if there's all these micro conditions and have it litigated two different ways if it comes to that, so.
I think a lot of it will come down to the reasons why it's being enacted. If you get beyond the preemption issue, as far as whether we can do it or not, if it comes down to whether it's a reasonable setback, like I said, a lot of it will come down to the reasons why. And the Shelby County ordinance, it has 4 or 5 pages of findings preliminarily in the document before the actual text, and that a lot of what they're doing ties into their overall comprehensive plan and reasons related to emergency response. So that anything that we did we would need to look at our comp plan here, and you know what the conditions are in Woodbury County that would justify it, or you know whatever setback we went with.
Okay.
I'm going to be supportive of this, but I think that, to me, hearing what we've heard, the charge and the call to you and to those boards is going to be rationale, justification, data-driven, methodical. Otherwise, if it's willy-nilly or arbitrary or seen as capricious, it's going to be not only litigated, but probably successfully. So that's what I would just urge caution towards, being very deliberate.
I mean, I guess, personally, I had a water line break out in front of my house, a little tiny break, but it shot 20 feet up out through the ground, buried 8 feet deep, and it's 20 feet up in the air. And that's, a pipe this big around under way less pressure. So to me, I think you would get a gas cloud that is pretty significant. And from a safety standpoint, I don't think 50 feet's enough, and I hope they adhere to a bigger distance, but I don't know.
I think if there's a feeling that there's a certain setback that, as you said, the data supports for Woodbury County, I think that another avenue that should be explored as well is submitting comments to the Iowa Utilities Board. I know that the state code references the route. There's some question to what extent the Utilities Board can determine the route too, but I think there's more support for that than each individual county having independent setbacks. So I think that if we determine what we think a good setback is, part of this too can be submitting comments to the Iowa Utilities Board asking that whatever they do would have that setback built in.
Looks like you had a busy couple of weeks.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll move it.
A second?
Motion by Raddick, second by Taylor. Any further discussion?
So at this point, it's just, we're not looking for a setback distance, we're just looking for.
Explore it.
Okay.
All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Passes 4-0. Thank you. Reports on committee meetings.
Mr. Grant Township Chairman, are you going to be at the IT meeting in the morning?
Yes.
Thank you. I like throwing that out there.
Yeah. Well,
Doctor.
Yeah, did you have anything? Anything for you? Met with UHY consultants last week.
Yui?
Yeah. We. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Jack Reagan,
Yeah.
UHY Consultants.
I think it was a good meeting. Nice to meet him in person. Anything from that, Dennis? That
Nope, it just says the way we're handling it, we're doing well with it. Monitoring it, things like that. And he's actually the head of the audit committee for a firm that's got 1,500 employees, besides 125 partners. He's one of the partners, but he's head of the audit committee that oversees audits, so I feel fortunate we got him with us.
all right.
Oh, I guess I did attend the Mobile, in Mobile, they had an announcement about the medical clinic achieving full funding, so using those funds as part of that, the $250,000 has certainly helped them reach their goal, and it was good news. So next spring, they anticipate breaking ground and finishing that year. Mercy and CNOS will be involved in leasing the space.
I would hope that use of ARPA funds would have as much media exposure
I would hope.
for something that's medically related and improves quality of life as some of the other media exposure, but
Hope springs eternal on this board, that's for sure.
Citizen concern, round two.
Go ahead.
Scott Mitchell, Emergency Services Director. So we had a little bit of a problem at the Hill on Thursday. Fired the boilers up and filled the boiler room full of CO2. Found on Friday when we had mics from Boiler Room Services, the chimney was plugged. The worst fears was the chimney collapsed. It hadn't. They dug it out, found bird, bat, dirt, feces, and dead animals, but the worst what they found was the mortar. The top 10 to 15 foot of that chimney is in bad shape. So by Mike's recommendation from Boiler Room Services, he says you can plate all four corners with a steel angle iron and tie all them together with steel to hold it for now, or you can play it out and see how long it'll hold till it falls off, because it will come off. I've got pictures of it where it's not in very good shape. I've showed Mr. DeWitt and Mr. Ung, but it wasn't as bad as what we thought, Keith, but it is, yeah, it is in bad shape. So, I don't know what you all kind of want me to do, but I really don't want to see it falling off there in the middle of January, and then we are in trouble, either.
CO2 pipeline out of there. Or it's carbon monoxide, isn't it?
Well, it's carbon, it sets the CO2 alarm off, and the smoke alarm,
okay.
that's what it sets off, is it's from the propane, you know.
So this actually was something that I was going to have on board concerns, but the use of ARPA funds for a new emergency service building, you know, I think we should explore that, because we looked at improvements to the HVAC system, which was, what, 1.2 million, 1.4? Greater than
Just short of
1.2.
1.3.
Yeah.
If I remember what you sent me, it was just short of 1.3.
And then that was just the HVAC side of it. And then you look at tuck pointing or any other improvements you need to make to the building. Seems like, you know, we're putting good money after bad.
And I have started the process putting the square footage together, and I have talked to Kenny and Rocky about it, and I will get something together and get with Kenny in the next couple weeks.
Now, did we bring this up with UHY when they were there? I thought we did.
we did.
And
It could qualify, yes. Do what?
it could qualify.
Okay.
And the other area that could qualify was, of course, tearing down the building across the street when the new facility opens. So if there's a way we can stretch the remaining 1.8 into this and that, I think that'd be an ideal situation. I mean, I don't know. What did we build the training center? It was about $500,000, was that right?
650 on it?
Something like that.
So-
you think the
training center would be enough for administrative offices for them because they already got storage. At least they had to take care of their bats and HVAC and their chimney problems.
So the same building's probably about 845 today. So that leaves $1 million for the tear down across the street. Or so. I know we're at about 1.5, aren't we?
Left,
Yeah.
yes.
So about 750 for building
What it
across the
costs
street.
to tear down the Prairie Hills and all those buildings, we might be surprised it might cost to tear that down because there's not asbestos in it.
Sure.
This included asbestos.
Well,
Yeah, I would guess that old school probably does have asbestos in it. I'd almost bet on it.
well, we don't necessarily have to tear it down right away. We could just build next to it. And
You'd
I
have
don't
Para
know if-
911 come and investigate it for spirits.
yeah.
I don't know feasibly if we could build next to it. I think we'd have to build west of it. I don't think we can tie on to that existing garage by the way it all lays there unless we want to haul a lot of dirt in.
Sure.
I mean, I've looked at it a couple different ways. I think the best way is we go to the west of the building in that flat area, then there wouldn't be that much dirt work we'd have to do.
I think this sounds like a really good idea for a future agenda item that to be publicly noticed and explored at some point, but
And
Well,
I think
yeah.
we're getting a little,
so,
yeah, but I think
I
it's
just
a good,
wanted to let you
discussing.
guys know what was going on because, we were afraid we were gonna have to put a stack in it and line it.
yeah, no, I think
We
it's
got
good.
lucky
I think it's good.
because it didn't look like that was gonna happen, but we did, so that's, yeah. Thank you.
Any other citizen concerns?
I do. Mark, can you come up? It's that time of the year again. Political signs are cropping up all over. And it's been brought to my attention that some of them are, I've witnessed it, and then also brought to my attention that they're in the county right away. And the county has a responsibility to see that they're removed.
And we can see to that starting tomorrow, so. We'd store them we'll end up with them at our Mobile shed so that the candidates or parties could pick them up there.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know somebody else was out there.
Deb Main, 1026 Charles Avenue. Summit didn't have some of the answers you needed. I have a couple of them. Our first informational meeting was September 16th of last year, and after that informational meeting, land agents could start contacting, and actually after the meeting, land agents could start contacting landowners for easements. So I will tell you at this point that 100% voluntary easements are not possible, not ever. If you want to explore some more about the ordinances, the Shelby County ordinance was vetted by Ehlers and Cooney in Des Moines. Tim Whipple did the work, and he is more than welcome questions, contacts by our board if you'd like. If you don't have his contact information, I can get that for you. I can also send you a lot of research articles on the how far carbon dioxide travels after a rupture. I can send you a demonstration of one that was done with an 8-inch pipe. It's horrendous, actually. And I'll update you on what happened in Woodbury County. Summit has sued at least 7 landowners throughout the state. One Woodbury County landowner won a case against a temporary injunction last week on Friday. Summit will not be allowed to survey their land, so now they're going to schedule a scheduling hearing to schedule a trial for that. There were 2 more cases. One was scheduled for tomorrow in Clay County and Spencer. That one has been canceled, and the one in Hardin County has been canceled, the hearings for temporary injunctions. There is also one in Dickinson County, and that hasn't been scheduled yet. And quite possibly, in light of this, that one might be canceled as well.
Deb, sorry, was that against Summit or against Navigator?
That's Summit.
Okay,
Well, the one in Mobile was Navigator.
Okay.
The others are Summit.
okay.
Yeah.
So the Woodbury County is Navigator rather than
Yes.
Summit, okay.
Yes, so
Thank you.
pipeline companies are suing landowners for surveys. So, well, let's see, what else do I have?
Sounds like a tough way to make friends.
I know. Why would we want to do business with a company that wants to sue us? I don't know. Summit did file on the docket a proposed scheduling procedure. They filed that on October 5th, and they wanted an intervention deadline by October 17th, which is unheard of. IUB, in their meeting today, didn't comment on that at all. But an intervention deadline, if you want to be an intervener in the party to the hearings and evidence in the case, I would suggest you file that right away before they might possibly approve that scheduling. Our lawyer has not responded to that yet. I would expect him to respond to that this week, but landowners are filing objections against the pressure to hurry up and move the process along. I don't know what their justification in that would be, because this is a huge project. At this point, if the more voluntary easements aren't obtained, it will cost the IUB alone over 11,000 man-hours to inspect each parcel. And it will cost Dan and his department a huge number of hours in the zoning aspect of it. So.
Deb, do you have Dan's email address?
I do. He probably doesn't want me to have it anymore, but.
The information that we would certainly receive it and take it, but I just want to make sure that anything that you're offering to us is going to them. As they study these issues, as we alluded to earlier, I think it'll be helpful for them to be able to point to some of these things, and so I just want to make sure that rather than just this way, that's happening that way as well.
And I'll check with you to make sure you have all that, but I think you do, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions you might have? Okay, thank you.
All right, any other citizen concerns?
Gail Palmquist from Lawton, Iowa. I feel like Deb and I are more well-versed than the people from Summit right now. I don't know where they're getting all this, but as far as emergency response teams, they are not going to equip our little towns with the equipment that they are going to need to answer a call out in the country. Okay? We need electric vehicles. They're not going to provide electric fire trucks and electric ambulances and whatever to all of us. An electric fire truck, I've been told, costs $1 million. Okay? So our local people are not going to be able to help us. And the hazmat team that's going to answer these calls has 7 counties in northwest Iowa that they are responsible for. Now, maybe we're lucky being this close to Sioux City, but if we're in one of those areas where the pipe erupts, you have 4 minutes to get out of there before you're dead. That cloud is going to take you, and it crowds all the oxygen out of the air. That's why your gas vehicles won't run. And people can't breathe without oxygen, so it's going to take us too. So it's a very serious thing. It's not just, how many of you would like to live in that kind of area where they're going 50 feet from your house, 500 feet from your house, whatever, you know? We're going to be dead out there. And you approved a wind turbine setback because of the health of the people, basically, right? Is that true?
Various reasons, but.
Yeah, well, that was an important one, right? Because people weren't going to sleep at night. Okay, I'll tell you what. These pipelines are a lot more dangerous and are going to be a lot more serious than somebody not sleeping at night. Another thing, they want to go 4 feet deep with their pipelines. Any of you that are familiar with farming know that land erodes, land shifts. We have all kinds of problems. And these what's the word for it? The approval with the company is for perpetuity, okay? Can you imagine in 100 years how much the land is going to change In 1,000 years, if we're still using them, I doubt it. But I doubt if we're using these pipelines in 10, 15 years. Ethanol is going to be out of style. California has already said they're probably not going to need us because they're changing to electric vehicles. So all the big claims about saving the world by getting this out of the system, and California needs our ethanol, is not going to be true in a couple of months. Not a couple of months, a couple of years. It's going to go down.
Well, Gail, that was your 3-minute timer.
Okay, well, I'll be back. You know that. I just don't want us to get in a hurry and pass something that's going to be a problem for all of us out in the country. So we don't get many farmers in here this time of year. They're all combining. We have a big fire going on right now out at Lawton. So I saw it when I came in. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Eric Nelson, 1514 Jasper Avenue at Mobile. I wanted to comment on this pipeline situation, and right away I want to say I'm not opposed to pipelines. We have a northern natural gas pipeline on some of our family property up in Cherokee County. It was, but a few comments here. It was surreal that Summit sent someone here that knew so little. Really. I mean, and the word that came to my mind was disrespectful to you folks. Really, there was some pretty simple, rudimentary information that was not ready, you know, and you guys have important things to do. And anyway, that I think if that's what they lead with in the public, what's going to go on out one-on-one behind, you know, or behind closed doors, all right? Don't forget, this pipeline is not a public utility. It is not. It's a for-profit entity. These pipelines like the Magellan, Northern Natural, were built back during the 40s to 1950 in reaction to a lot of national security issues. And so it was, you know, those were done under, you know, completely different circumstances. Some questions to ask. Can this pipeline ever be used for anything else if it changes hands? There are pipelines that have pushed fertilizer, diesel fuel, gasoline, all kinds of different materials other than what they were initially built for. All right, so that needs to be found out. Will the landowner be responsible for perpetual maintenance of that pipeline? And this is a shocker. So on our land, we received notice from Northern Natural Gas this summer that through their scanning, they had determined that we have some pipeline on our property that's too shallow. And so we got back to them and, you know, said, you know, you want access to work on it? They said, no, but, you know, we'll come and mark it for you so that you can take care of the problem. We, as landowners, are responsible for getting that pipeline as deep in the ground as it has to be. Unbelievable. Really, so that absolutely needs to be checked on. Don't forget, Woodbury County existed well before the Iowa Utilities Board, and don't think for a minute that what you decide to do here won't take precedence over anything that the state's going to tell you, and don't let anybody else tell you that. There's 99 of the most powerful people in the state of Iowa are the county sheriffs in the counties to preserve safety. And don't, you know, I mean, study the property rights fights that go on in the western United States, and it's already moving here. I can see it just in what we've had with these wind towers and now with this pipeline. But there is no entitlement to someone to come in and be able to build a pipeline. If it's for profit, they can use their profits to handsomely remunerate people for going on their property. And lastly, eminent domain. Because this is not a public project, this is a private project. Eminent domain, I do not believe should be used. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Anybody else? Yeah, why not?
Doyle Turner, 2738 200th Street. I'm no expert on carbon pipelines. We do have 2 pipelines on family-owned property, and really haven't had much issue with them. However, if you go back, I read this in the abstract years ago, they were taken by eminent domain, and the purpose of eminent domain is to serve the public interest. Well, the thing we have to remember is that property owner is also part of the public. So what those, and we're talking these easements were done a long time ago, those farmers were given the opportunity to either take the payment or they could hook up to the pipeline. Now, out of those 2 pipelines, one of them typically is running natural gas. And if you go around out in the country, you will see where a few farmers were smart enough to take that natural gas. I'm telling you, this CO2 is like an oil mine, or an oil well, excuse me. It has value. The United States Air Force is currently making synthetic jet fuel that they can use about half of what they burn out of CO2, and it does not require a whole lot of infrastructure in order to do it. They can do it in remote areas so that they don't have to ship nearly as much fuel to like an Afghanistan or something. So this has an enormous amount of value, and I think this is a problem with Iowa. We export a lot of our commodities rather than adding value to them. In my opinion, what you need to do is go back to what they did in the old days. My understanding is these pipelines are not allowing people to hook up to them. And I think if they're going to come into Woodbury County just for the purpose of possible value added, that we should force them to allow the property owner to at least have the option of hooking onto the pipeline. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else to be heard? Board concerns? Go ahead.
So just wanted to give a very brief update on what I know from last week. Went out to Hornick, was able to survey, and my understanding in talking to our county engineer is that more than likely, it sounds like they're going to get the in-town paving started this week. And so that's the prep for paving, rather.
This week, the contractor moved in the grade trimmer. Today, we were taking shipments of the dowel baskets, expansion joint material, and other items that will be needed for the paving. Contractor's plan is to move in a motor grader tomorrow and start doing the rough grading. If all goes well with that, Friday and Monday, they'll probably be trimming. So paving, we're looking at probably later next week, but I'll get confirmation on that.
Okay.
There's a lot of prep work that needs to be done before you just slap concrete on the base. So.
Okay. But we're moving
doing this week
forward.
is moving in the equipment and supplies they're going to need. The crews are coming in behind that to do the actual work.
Okay. Right. Thank you for the update.
Mm-hmm. That's the latest as of 4/20. So.
Okay.
All right, Rocky, do you have any?
No.
Nothing? All right. Yep, Salix next week. Was it their City Hall building, right? Community centers, yeah, okay, yeah.
And that's going to be in lieu of our meeting, our
Correct.
actual Board of Supervisors
Yeah,
meeting will be
next
there.
week, our meeting, this building is getting the upgrades for the AV system. 18 months down the road from when we bought it.
So 4:30 Salix?
I think it's 5:30, we did it later.
It's 5:30.
Yeah. It's their community center. And it's basically their city hall, isn't it?
So it's going to be a regular supervisors meeting?
Correct. It's going to be kind of a pared down meeting. I don't expect as many agenda item requests, but it's where we're meeting. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so no other board concerns? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.